document or get elements by ID. Let me find one ID that I can get here. Okay, so this ID, this one ID here. So this is how we manipulate the DOM before. We do this get element by ID stuff, and then yeah, you're gonna get me this. And then if, for example, when someone clicks a button, you want to update this, then you now do document or get element by ID dot inner HTML or inner text. That's how we manipulate the DOM before. That's how they still do it for those that still use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for websites. So this is like the ideal way to do it. Or get element by class name, or those functions or those methods that allow us to manipulate this DOM, this document object model. So that's how it's done, which is very expensive in the sense that, see now, if I click on this, it's going to open up this this modal, and if I start typing, a lot of interactions are happening. Maybe it's storing my what I'm typing in, maybe in the local storage or something, I don't know. But you get the idea. There are a lot of interactions happening, a lot of updates that is happening, a lot of change events, a lot of input events, a lot of events happening at the same time. So manipulating the DOM one after the other, it's very expensive, and it can even lead to bug. When you have a lot of document.objects.get elements by ID, documents.get element by class name, when you have a lot of them, it can lead to expensive functionality, in the sense that it can start slowing down your website. When you say you want to update something based on an event, and it's supposed to update immediately an event happen, but it's not going to update immediately because of how expensive it is, or because probably it takes time to do, or because of the way you handle it. So all these expensive operations slows down websites, and that's one of the another benefit of React. React does not React has this concept of virtual DOM, which is more like a mimic of this DOM. But the idea is, when you want to update this DOM, by default, the way we do it is document.get element by ID, then you do your updates. So React would take that, your update from you, and then check the normal DOM, which is this document, and see if there's a difference between what you want to update and what already exists here. If there's a difference, then React would update this. Otherwise, React would not update it, which is very smart thing to do, because this document.get element by ID stuff that we used to use, or any other ones, are very expensive, in the sense that they render the DOM, they modify the DOM, they manipulate the DOM, and that can lead to a lot of lagging. So React has this concept of virtual DOM to handle that for you. Okay, so then another concept is one-way data flow. And then the idea is, so let's think of it. How can I explain this? So let's think of it as let's still use the concept of building houses. So in houses, when you build a house, you need to have ideally you should have a water system. So when you have a water system, it's always stored in the storage tank. We have a pumping machine that pumps the water and then store it in the storage tank. So that storage tank is where your water is stored. But of course, you use the water in a lot of rooms, in the dining, in the kitchen, in the toilet and bathrooms. So you distribute the water to those places. But the fact remains that your water is coming from a single source, which is the storage tank. And that's the idea of one-way data flow in React. In your application, it's okay. You can have a lot of components. You can do a lot of manipulations. This value that is here, you can do it the way you want. You can have this here, you can have this here. Like, you can do all whatever you want to do. But React mandates that you have a single source for all your data sets or all your data on your application, because at the end of the day, what we are working on application is data. All interactions and everything manipulate data. If you create a post, it's a data you are sending to LinkedIn's database. So they are all data at the end of the day. So everything must come from a single source, and the way you store it is left to you. But all your data must come from a single source. And then if any component needs it, then you can pass it to that component as what we call props. And you storing your data in a single source is what we call state. So think of your storage tank as a state. It's what React calls it. It's called state. Can you still hear me? Okay, thanks. So yeah, so you can then pass the data to any component that need it. That's what we call props. So let me see if LinkedIn, I don't know if LinkedIn uses React, but let me inspect and see if I can. So there's this library, React Dev Tools, Chrome. I think when you install this Chrome extension, you can check. Okay, actually have it. You can know if an application uses React. So when you inspect it, it's going to add a new tab for the application. So I don't know if this is it. Redux. I'm not so sure. So they said because Facebook built React, so let's assume Facebook will be using React in-house. So let's see if we can inspect it and see if there will be that stuff here. So why is it not showing here? Application. Do I still have this application? Do I still have, or do I need to enable it? Oh, I think I need to enable it here. Okay. It's not here still. This is strange. I ought to be saying something called components, and it's strange that it's not here. Anyways, yeah, let's proceed. But it would have been interesting if I can show us how this how Facebook looks like as React components. So on your hand, you can install this application, this extension, React Developer Tools. So you can use it to inspect any website that uses React. Of course, it's developed by Facebook. So yeah, that's by the way. So React has concept of components, and components is, like I mentioned, is just the way we said. Think of them as blocks. When you want to build a house, you have different blocks. So that's the idea of components. You just dissecting your website into different minute components, and they can be independent or dependent. And then we have states, which is like the single source of truth, where you store all your application data, and then you pass them to any component that needs it. via props. So that's the concept of React. It's a very interesting framework, and it's used by a lot of organizations. In fact, if you search LinkedIn, maybe LinkedIn jobs, if you search for React, you see a lot of jobs that have React as requirements. If you search it on Glassdoor, if you search it on Indeed, you can just do it right away. Just to show you that the employability of React is just there. React, you can see it. So you knowing React is something that is okay. This is for Nigeria. Let me just remove this and do a global search. So you can see 44,375 jobs with React. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. This one just posted it. So of course, most of these jobs are usually full stack, and thankfully, if you attended the Django REST framework and the Django session, that means you already have an idea of backend. And now that I want to do React, you have an idea of front end. So that will already make you a full stack, and you can apply to this kind of jobs. Even aside full stack, there are also jobs that are purely front end. So the beauty of you being a JS developer is that you can switch. Like, you have a flexibility of applying to front end jobs, or applying to back end jobs, or applying to full stack jobs, or even applying to GIS analyst, GIS technician jobs. Because you can write front end with React, you can write back end with Django, you can do GIS analysis, because I mean that's what we have background in anyways. So you can always use any software, ArcGIS, QGIS, and the likes for those analysis stuff. So it's a huge plus, and it makes us flexible. So you can apply to this kind of jobs. So what you just need to do is just work on a few projects, and then you're good to go. So that's, by the way, just to show us that it's exciting to learn React. The employability is there. So it will look like you're just learning what doesn't have recruiting value or market value. So that's just the background of React. But how do you get started? How do you start writing React? So to start writing React, you need, ideally, you should have Node.js on your computer. That's by default. If you're doing anything JavaScript, it's important you have Node.js installed on your system, because this is how you install libraries in JavaScript. This is what we use. Just like the way we have Python, because Chrome, if you look at Chrome, this browser right here, when I inspected it, I was writing JavaScript and it was working in my console. I can do var x equals to 3. I can do cons, I can write this kind of stuff. So the engine here, the engine that is making this thing to run, I can't remember the name of the engine, but the engine that is powering this node, this Chrome, is what is part of what they use to develop this Node.js. So it's more like bringing the browser to your system, because ideally your system does not know anything like it that is Node, right? Your system is just your system. It can only run zeros and ones, and that's why you even need to install Python before you can even be able to write Python. So that's the same thing with JavaScript. You need to install Node, because it's when you install Node, and after you install Node, so think of Node as Python. Of course, they are way different. Python is a programming language, and Node is just a framework. So just think of it like that. Then think of the way we have Python package managers in Python, like pip. Then you start thinking of pip as npm or yarn in Node. So we need these two. Install Node for your computer. When you install Node, then you install npm. In fact, I think by default, Node should come with npm by default. So this npm is like the package manager we have for this, is like the pip of Python. any package you want to install in Node is right here, just like the way we have pip in Python package index. So that's the same PyPy rather. So yeah, this is the same concept. So if you want to install, the way we install in Python, if you want to install a library, you do pip install this. Now in JavaScript, you have to do npm install this or yarn. So yarn is like an alternative for npm. It's quite faster. It has a lot of benefits, right? But they are doing the same thing. So the reason why you need to have these guys is because when we want to create a React application and start building in React, we need to install this library, create React app. So, and we need those guys before we can be able to install it. So, okay, it's even here, you can see it requires Node 14.00 and npm 5.6 before you can run this commands. So let's assume you have npm. If you don't have npm, if you don't have Node, just install it. It's very easy to install. It's pretty easy. So when you install Node and npm, then you can be able to run this command. So this command will help you to create a new React application. So let me just do that right away. So I have Node. If I type Node now, you see I have Node version 14.18. So I was typing exit as if it's Python. So yeah, so let's just copy and paste this. So you can. So this command is saying npx. So npx is also is bundled with this guy. It's bundled with it. So don't be confused. It's not a typo. You can see it's a package runout, so that comes with npm. So don't be confused. So when you run the command npx create React app, so this library is what is helping us to create the React application, and then this my app is where you want to give it. That's the name of the application I want to create. So because we already have an API from Django, that's to do API, then I just create a to do React application to interact with the API. So yeah, let me just call it to do. And then you press enter, it's going to run and then create the to do folder with all the basic configurations you need to write React. Perfect. So this is it right here. It's coming up. So let's give it some minutes. So this process used to take quite some time, depending on your network connectivity. But just have to wait for it. So what it's trying to do, it's trying to download some applications like the React itself right here, the React DOM, React script and then the template for the application. Let me expand this. So we still have what's this happening? Oh, finally. Okay, so it's almost done. Let me check the folder. Okay, we are getting there. So I think it's my network. Yours can be faster than this. So okay. Hey. Wow. Finally. Okay, so yeah, that took a while. So now that we have our application here using the create react app template, so the next thing we need to do is to enter this folder. I'm currently in the base folder, so I'll just change directory into this folder. And then I'm in the folder. Then I'll run npm start to start the React application. So explain what just happened shortly. So like I said, npm is like a package manager, just like we have pip in Python. So if you want to run any command, you have to append npm. Either you start an application or you doing other things, you have to call npm. And that's what I just did. npm start. So let's just go through this folder so you can know where the start is coming from. So in this folder, using the templates, the create react app template, we have node modules. So node modules is basically where all the libraries you are installing to use in your application will be stored. If you scroll down, you'll see React itself. So these things are JavaScript libraries or modules. Yeah, so this is React itself. And you can extend it to see the code that they use to write React itself. You can check everything. Of course, most are usually minified, so you can't really understand. Like this, for example, it's minified, so you can't really understand what's happening there. So you can see the code that they use to write React itself, and not just React. You can see copyright Facebook Inc. So it's a Facebook project, so you can check the code base. So it's not just React; it's for all JavaScript libraries they install in your application. They get stored there, more like the npm that you use to install the package. Download that package and store it here, so you can always read to see the code you are using, or maybe you might want to modify some of them. So that's what is actually that's the function of this guy right here, to store all your packages. Then we have public. So the function of this public folder is where you store HTML and public files, more like the files that you want to expose to the public on your website, which is usually the HTML, which is still the same HTML that we all know. You can see it's still the same HTML. And then logo is the default logo that comes with Create React app, and then another logo in bigger size, and then manifest. This is mostly used with progressive web applications. Robot.txt, which is by default for SEO. These are things you add to your website to let any scroller, especially Google scroller, when they are trying to index your website, you can use this to let them know what you accept, what you want to be indexed on your website, or what you don't want to be indexed. So for those that do web scraping, when you visit any website, it's ideal for you to visit the robots.txt to know if they support web scraping. Let's see if LinkedIn has robot.txt. So mostly all websites used to have it. Zero robots. Let's see. Yeah. So this LinkedIn's robots.txt. So you can use this to know the pages that LinkedIn disallow. Okay, don't scrape their learning, don't scrape their LinkedIn settings, search, don't scrape this profile, don't scrape redirect. Okay, you can scrape help, you can scrape all these ones. So this is just like what robot.txt means. So this is where you specify those stuffs. So then what else is here? Favicon. I believe you all know Favicon, so it's usually here as well. So now let's open the HTML. So this HTML is still the same HTML. We have a normal HTML edge tags. The only thing that is changing here is that we don't have any other HTML tag aside just this single div right here. So then it's ID of root. So you can't find any aside, you can't find any section or any other HTML tag. And that's what React is trying to do. So React has this virtual DOM whereby you write your website in components, in JavaScript, in JSX actually, and then React does the transpilation to DOM using the inbuilt virtual DOM. That is, it translates everything you've written into aside, section, and those kind of stuff for you. So you don't need to write everything here again. And I'll show us how that happens. By the way, you can always modify this. I think we can already change this to do app, because this title, so title still remains the same. And then so you can see the special tag, this percentage, then public URL, and then percentages as well. So this is what comes. This is like inbuilt in React. If you want to reference anything inside this public folder, you can use this percentage sign, public_URL, percentage sign. to access this public folder, then / the file you want to access, which in this case is the favicon.io. Then for this one is the logo. So this is like what this comes with React. So yeah, let's change this to do app. I think that's what we can do here. There's not much to change here in this public. And then the next folder is the source. So this source folder is where you write all your application, no matter how complex it is. This is where you write it. And in this source folder, you can create multiple subfolders and stuff. It's left to you. You can do the magic. Then in this source folder, we have the first one, app.css, which is still the same, the same CSS. No, nothing changed. These are still keyframes. Then we have app.js. So this app.js is, I think, is what is powering this this page. This edit source app.js and save to reload. Yeah, that's what is powering this page. So you can see edit source. So let's say edited and save. You can see it has updated. So what just happened, you can see we don't do any document.get elements by ID or something. React does the update by itself. So that's what this here is what's powering this page. And if you notice, this is just a JavaScript function. These are the right function in JavaScript. And then in this function, you have a return. And then in this return, you now have HTML content. And this is what is called JSX. So in the function, you are returning HTML. And this is what we call components. This is JSX. The syntax is JSX, and it's what we call component. So it's not this app component. If you go to test, this is where you write your test, normal test. This is still the same CSS. So the root of all this, all the content in this source, the entry point is this index.js. And what is happening in this index.js is const React DOM. This virtual DOM that does all the manipulation for us, .create root, document.get element by ID root. So what's happening here is that React is getting this. Where's that one? Index.html. This div, that's the ID of root. So React is getting that root ID using the document.get element by ID, and then root.render. React is rendering it. So meaning whatever you write in your application and whatever you place inside this place will be rendered to the DOM by React DOM. I don't know if that makes any sense. So it's pretty dynamic. If you change this to something else, let me just put E here, for example. If I save this, you see our website is now blank because nothing is being rendered by React. If I return this back to root, this script right here in this index.js will render it to the website, and then we have our application. So whatever you place in between this React.strict mode. And what does this strict mode means? It means if there's any issue in my application as I'm developing it, catch it for me so that I can be able to fix it. So in case you have any typos or any bad use of functions and stuff, methods and those kind of stuff, you just be seeing them in your console here. Like you have error online, so. That's basically what this one does. So let me remove this app, and then you see that nothing will be rendered on the website. So in between this is where you place your components, and because you can have a lot of components, it doesn't make sense to be putting everything here. So you usually have a top level component, and that's why we have this app as a top level component. So in this app, you can have all other components under it. You understand? So you can componentize everything. And yeah, so I don't really have I think I have a simple design. I was thinking there should be a design you can use to just develop to do application, so that we can have a design to follow, you know. So I think I worked on this small simple design, just so simple, because you know, let me see, yeah, just something simple. My to-do list, then a search bar that we can use to search our to-do, and then the list of our to-dos. So very simple stuff. So we can just use this to understand how components works in React, and then how to do interactions, how to fetch APIs in React. So that's by the way. So yeah, so that means we need to start removing unnecessary or unwanted files, like all this logo. This is a React logo. We don't need it, so you can delete it. Let me delete that right away. And of course, when you delete it, wherever it's being referenced, it's throw errors, so you need to also remove it as well from where it's being referenced. So I don't need this as well. This is React logo. I don't need it. We don't need this. I don't need this as well. So, and of course, you know, get to know. So that also comes with the templates. We're going to need that in case we want to push our application to GitHub. So it can help us remove node modules. You don't push node modules to GitHub, never. So GitHub will help us with that. Then package lock is just how we have, just where you store the lock of all the packages in your package.json. So package.json is where all your dependencies are referenced, just like we have if you use kepenv before, or virtualenv, just like we have requirements.txt in Python. So think of package.json like that. It stores, and even more, it can do more. It stores your dependencies. You can also put some scripts here. You know, earlier when we did npm start to start this React server, what was actually happening is npm looked into this folder under scripts. It saw start, and then the value in front of start is this. So this is the actual command that ran. React script start. You understand? So there's a lot of more stuff that we can do with this package.json. So yeah. Okay, so you're rendering app as the top level component. So then inside app, let me remove this. So here we can now start designing our UI for the to-do list application. So ideally in the source folder, we are advised to create another folder which is called components. So it is this folder that you now store all your components. You understand? And we can already forecast that we're going to have a component for to-do item, that is a single to-do application. And notice the extension for your file is going to be JSX. Of course, if you use JS, it's going to work. But ideally, it's recommended to use JSX. So that's that. Then also I can forecast that we're going to have another component for, okay, maybe you can just keep creating it and proceed, because that's one of the strengths of being a React developer. You're the one that will decide what you want to, where you want to, or the kind of components you want to create. Of course, I can use this single app.js. Inside this div, I can build all the to-do lists. But that's not why we have React. Why we have React is to separate concerns, have different components, and componentize the website so that it can be easy to work with, and the code base can be easy to understand, instead of just putting everything about your application on under a single div. So okay, this is trying to import this, and I've already deleted it. So these are just some extras, not necessary at this point. Okay, now we have a blank page, so we can start to, let me just type something here, and let's see. Okay, it's right here. So I think this is taking styling from app.css, so it's still the same CSS, nothing has changed. And you can see this class app, and this text align center. So that's why the text I typed is right here. So if you notice, this is not class again, this is not class name. And the reason is because in normal HTML, class represents normal class, and then we have ID as well. So to differentiate it, that's why React added name to the back, class name, so that it's going to differentiate it from the normal class that we have or that we use for in HTML. And that's also the JSX syntax. So class name and class are the same. So yeah, so based on this UI, where should we even start from? Yeah, maybe we can start from this title, which we can use h1 for. So this still remains the same. You still use your normal HTML and CSS. So let's see my to-do list. Perfect. So then we have a search box here. So let me, after the to-do list, then we have a search box. So how do we do search box in HTML? I think we use input tag, and then we say the type is equals to search, I think, and then we have placeholder search, so you can say search to do. So let's see if that works. Nice. Okay, so let's give it a class name of search box, so I can be able to style it in the CSS, this app.css. So search box, so we can give it a padding of 2 or not 10 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Okay, much better. Then what else can I don't want to really focus on styling, so yeah, I think I don't need to focus much on styling, but it works. You can feel free to style it the way you want to style it. Maybe I can increase it a bit. Let's say 100 pixels. Okay, that's too small. So what's the styling used for this? Okay, no styling has been used for. Okay, app. Let's see. Let's see if I use 30. That's too much. 25. Perhaps this is much better. Okay, then what else do we have? Then we have the actual to-do list stuff. So you feel free to do the styling. So then for the to-do list, let's make them a div that will now render to do 1, to do 2, sudo 3. So how does that look? Okay, so let's put them in a single div so that we can be able to, you can see I'm still writing the same HTML and CSS. I'll show us how we componentize shortly. Okay, so let's give this a class name of to-do list, and then in that same CSS so how do we style this? Let me first give it a border to see, because I use this a lot, to see what I'm working with. Okay, so let me give it a padding. Let's give them a padding of 10 px, and let's give it a margin top of 10 px, so that it can have some space. In fact, 20. Yeah, just 20. Okay, so that's for the container, the to-do container. Then each of these divs, let's give them a class name of to-do item, so that you can style each of the divs. To-do item or to-do task, so you can give this. So then again, padding of 10 px, let's give them a border 1 px, let's give them a border radius of 10 px so that it can look a little bit pretty. Let's say border 1 px dashed gray. Okay, then since okay, so let's do this a single to do. Let's put the cursor to be pointer, so at least, so I can remove this one already now. You can play with the width. Let's give the margin button, say 5, not 10 px, so they can be separated. So that's another thing we can do. So I'm thinking, so depending on how you want to do this, we can use Flex to arrange it, or Grid, but I think the way they are listed like this, it's not entirely bad. So what else will I want us to explore? The ability to delete a to-do. So let's say in a to-do one, let's add a span that would hold a button that would be do delete. In fact, it doesn't need to be a button, it can be anything. But let's see. In fact, let me just make this a div RSP for the paragraph for the item itself, and then a button for the delete. Trying to think ahead what we might want to do. What else are we going to be needing? I might want to delete it to do, I might want to edit it to do. But this thing will make sense very soon. Edit it to do. Yeah, I think that's basically all we need. So I think let me put these guys beside each other, so I can use Flex for that. So I can say to do actions, and then I just use this Flex for this one. Display Flex, so it can be beside, and then justify content space between. Let's see how it looks. Delete, edit, not bad. Then what else? Well, this styling will be done later. Okay, so I think we have a basic. Maybe I can just turn this to button, so it's going to look like and the action would be happening when we click on it. Okay, so let's assume we have this is our to-do list looks like when we create a to-do. So here we also need a button to create a to-do. So we can have an input for that. Input, so this one is for search. So let's just say under this search bar we can have another input, but this time it will be text that will tell you to create to do. You can see the same class with search box since we want basically the same typing. Okay, so let's see. Where's the search box class? Search box, okay. You just put them in a div and separate divs so that. Okay, well, I think I'm styling them later. So what else do I need? I need to be able to search to do. I need to be able to create a to do. I want to create a to do. I need something to press. So I might need a button as well for enter. That will say add to do. So when you click on add to do, then it will add it to do to this list right here. Then when the to do is added, you can click on edit to do. When you click on edit to do, to probably maybe populate this box with this to do that you want to edit, or maybe just turn this to an input box where you can be able to edit the to do. And then when you click on delete, it will just remove this. So is there anything else we need again? I think that's all. So let's start componentizing it, and then let's start creating the logic. Then you can always play with the styling later. So you can use this single stuff, this whole page for everything, and nothing will happen. But let's separate the concern to make it more readable. So if you notice, this card right here can be a component on its own. Why do I say so? Because it's repeated a lot of times. That's one reason. In fact, this is when you know that you need to componentize something, when you see yourself writing it all over and over and over. And there's this concept in even programming generally called DRY principle. Don't repeat yourself. If you see yourself repeating stuff more than once, twice, or thrice, then you need to start thinking of ways to make it better. So in this case, we can componentize it, because if you notice, I have a div for to do one. In fact, I have one for to do two, one for to do three. So that means, let's say I'm done styling this and it's working the way I expect it to work. That means I will need to start pasting it for the next to do, and then paste it again for the third one, right? Which doesn't make sense. So you can componentize this guy right here, and it's as easy as creating a components folder, and then in the components folder you create a new file called to do item. So you can name yours the way you want, but I will name mine to do item. So in that to do item file, you import React from React. So when you import React from React, then you create the function. So actually there are different ways to create components in React. We have class components, and then we have the functional components. Lately, the functional component is widely used, so I'll encourage us to use functional components. So in fact, this section will be based on functional components. So, and what a functional component means, it means you creating components the way you create normal React functions. And how do we write React functions? JavaScript functions rather. We say function name, function input, and then the function will return something. These are you write normal functions in JavaScript. So the difference with normal function in JavaScript and the one in React is that in React functions, that is in React components, you have to return something, and that thing must be HTML, which is JSX in this case. So it can be div, it can be aside, it can be section, it can be, just name it, but it has to just return something. You understand? And because this is a file that is developed for to do item, so we can name this to do item, and then we have to export it as default so that we can be able to import it in other files. So it's as easy as this. And what can we do with this? We can just go to that app.js and basically copy what we have here for a single to-do item and then paste it here. And then instead of repeating these divs every time, we can just import that to-do item and put it here. So to-do item, and then you can just put this tries 1, 2, 3, and then we have it. If you want to add more, put it again, and then you have the fourth one. So instead of writing divs and littering your code base with a lot of divs, you can just separate them. Have the to-do item that houses the div, and then you can just import it as a component. So this is a component right here, and then use it the way you want to use it. Meaning that even right here, you can still style it, you can do normal stuff, and you can also pass value to this guy right here. You can see we have to do one here. We have to do one everywhere, and it's because this is what I have here in this component. So if you want to make this dynamic, we start looking at what we call props. So these functions can, ideally in JavaScript, functions can receive parameters X and Y or anything, and that's the same thing with React, just slightly different. And the difference is that this one can receive what we call props. So these props can be anything that you pass to this component from anywhere in the application, and you can console log it. Let me see, console.log props. So let's check the console of this application to see. You can see we have objects. If we expand it, is empty because there's nothing there, of course. And now do you add something there? You pass anything you want to pass from where you are using this application. So in this app.js, we are using this component here. So you pass props by just typing it here, say props on equals to, then you put it in this and say to do one. These are your pass props. Beside the component that you've imported or that you are using in your application, just put it beside it as x equals to the value. So this x now is a prop that holds this value. In fact, if you go on it, you see it's property. Prop is actually like a short for property anyways. So you can see we have props one here. So if I go back to this, my console log, I've not changed my console log. I'm still console logging all the props that this item is receiving. You see that it now has props 1 to do 1, props 1 to do 1. You can see. If I do props 2 to do 2, like you can, it's unlimited. You can put as many props as you want. You can just keep putting it, right? It's unlimited. If I go to that console again, you see it. Props 1 to do 1, props 2 to do 2. So that's how this basic what props is all about. It's just you passing data from one place to another as properties. Now, data is coming from this to do this app component. It's going to this to do item component, and then this to do item component is receiving it here, and then I'm console logging it. Right. So to make this item dynamic, I can in fact use the value of the props that is being received from here, right here. So instead of me writing to do one and add coding to do one, I can make this to be dynamic and say props dot to do item or just to do. So in JavaScript, this is how we write dynamic components. In fact, this is the main JSX syntax, allowing you to write JavaScript within HTML. So this bracket here is where you can write your JavaScript. You can do most JavaScript expressions. You do itinerary operator, you can do binary comparison and stuff like that. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to grab these props because it's the dictionary, it's objects in JavaScript, so I can do props dot then get the value, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to grab the to do. Now it's going to be past this to do item. So if I go back to where I use this to do item, I need to create a props named to do, and then the value will not be the to do list. Say watch movies. So if I save this, you can see this is now watch movies. Of course, the others will be empty because I did not pass any props to the others. I did not pass any value to them. So you can see where the dynamic TC is coming in. It's becoming dynamic now. So I can have different to dos. I can say watch series, read book, play movies, So if I go to my to-do list, you can see. So before I was just having to do one everywhere, but now you can see we now have it to be dynamic. And that's one of the benefits of React. And of course, if you go to the console log, you see all the props that I'm logging. So let me remove the console log. So here now is a component that is isolated from this app.js, so I can do all my styling here once and for all. So this is not still dynamic enough because we want our to do to be coming from the backend, but we're going to get there later. So that's one. Then another thing is we can even go beyond this, because if you notice, we are still repeating this to-do lists. You can see to-do item like 5 times. So another benefit of using JSX is you can even loop through arrays. So let's say we have an array of to-do lists. We can loop through it even within this HTML. I think this is more or less like Jinja. If you write Django, you know how we do write Python in Jinja using for loop and stuff like that. It's the same concept we have here. You still be able to do JavaScript stuff even within HTML and CSS. Just think of it that way. So let's say ideally we're supposed to fetch data from the backend, but let's say we already have our data on the backend. We have to do lists like this, fetch movies. Okay, let's use the way it usually comes from backend, which is mostly in JavaScript objects. You can see ID1. I think this is how we design our backend, and then task. Go to. Okay, let's also visit the movies. Why am I using movies for? The person coming to my head is just movies. And let's say we have 4 to-dos. 1, 2, 3. Visit the movies, read books, learn, react. So let's say we have this. Of course, this can be outside as well. Let me have it outside the components. So now we have to-do lists, and then so even within this HTML, we can do what is called looping, or looping, the way we loop through arrays, because at the end of the day is an array, right? So, and if you want to do JavaScript in React, this is what you use, this JSX syntax. This is what that allows you to do it. So I can just call that my to-do list array, and then map through it. And when you're mapping in JavaScript, you need to pass a callback, which is a function that will do the mapping. So in that callback, you have the individual item, which is to do, and then you also have the index, right? So you have access to individual item, so to do, and then the default all function we have index. That's not you might not need to worry about that. And then inside this map, you need to return something, and you must return either HTML, a JSX syntax, or even a component. So let's return a component in this case. Let me remove all this. So you can see this is 1, 2, 3. This is happening 3 times because this is looping thrice, and this is determined by this array. This array has 3 items, so it can only loop 3 times. But this is not dynamic enough because we still have watch movies, which is basically what we have here. So to make it dynamic, you can pass this value right here, this to do, which is this object that has ID and the task, and then pass the task here as to do dot task. So now if you go to the browser, you see that is now dynamic. We have visit the movies, learn, react, and read books. And then by default in React, when you're looping and performing this kind of expression in JSX, you need to pass what you call key to this component or to anything you are returning, and this allows React to keep track of your of components, to keep track of updates. And in fact, if you notice, let me even remove this key. You see it's stray an error. So stray an error earlier, and the error is because there was no key property. I can't see this here. But when you pass this key, is to prevent side effects actually, because React is so smart, so it needs to know to be able to keep track of individual items that you are passing, so that if, say for example, one of them has changed in value, to know how to update it. So this key is the way is one of the ways it does that. You need to pass it a key to keep track of each individual items, that is each to-do items, visit the movies, this and this. So that's one cool trick. Now our code is looking more cleaner and it's looking more componentized. So you have to do item, which is a component here, and what this one is doing is just getting that props, that is this props here, and it's just displaying it. Simple. That is as simple as that. So what else? So I think I should also mention how to comment in JavaScript. By default, these are the comments in JavaScript, but when you're in a component like this, you don't comment. Let's say you have H2 here and you want to comment this out. You can't use this double slash to comment it out. You need to use this right here to comment it out. So this is how we write comments. So the way we write normal long comments in JavaScript is how we write we comment out in components. So yeah, I think this is basically the idea of React. You're trying to dissect your application into different components, you know. Like for example, this search box can also be a separate component. And how do we do that? We create a new file in this component. New file, searchbox.jsx. And then let me just create, okay, let's import React first. Import React from React. That's usually the first thing you do when you create a new component. And then function searchbox return, then you export default searchbox, and then just come here and grab this that we want to return this. That's all we want to do, this default. So then this search box, I'll just, of course, show you the browser. The search box is normal here. So when I bring in the component to come back here, so this way now you can, you know, say something is wrong with your search box. You don't need to come back to this application. Just go to that search box directly and then do whatever you want to do to it, right? And that way your application is componentized and its concerns are separated, and then it even helps with bug fixes. If the search bar is not working the way you want it to work, you know where to go to. You don't need to bother yourself visiting the app or visiting the to-do item or something. You understand? So what else can we componentize? You can also componentize this box for creating a new to-do. Of course, you don't need to over-engineer your application. That's very important. You don't need to like componentize everything. But if you feel there are some things that are reusable, like this one that we did now is reusable, you can componentize it. If you feel some things are very powerful, you can also componentize them. So that's that about componentizing and passing props. Another interesting thing about let me remove this creating of to do first. Let's have just search box. Another thing about doing about React is you can states. So state is, like I said, is more like the data source where the data is stored. And in fact, one of the key ways to know a React, like a very good React developer, is that the person knows where to put the states, and also knows what to componentize and what not to componentize. So for example, in this application now, these to-do items, this to-do list array can be a state because it's storing data, it's storing this information, visit the movies, this and this. So as you can see, we store it in the app.js because the app.js is the top level, and then the one is where we are performing the looping and is where we are returning the to-do item. And it can be anywhere. We can decide to put it in a separate component called to-do list component, and in that to-do list component is where we're going to do all this looping, all this mapping of array. And what we just do is just render the to-do list component here, and you can also do that. Let's even try that. Let's create a new component called to-do list.jsx, and then import React as usual. So I think I used lower. Okay, And then we have, so you can like go as, you can do a lot of there's no props, is there? Okay, no props. So then it's like this app.js. So what this looping that is happening, I'll just cut it and then put it right here. And then export default to-do list. So something you should also notice that components start with capital letter. That's very important. So here you just import the to-do list. So you can see your app is looking more cleaner and more nice. So that's the beauty of componentization. So then that to-do item will not be imported in this app again because I'm using it in this to-do list. And you can see nothing changed. So you can see like you can structure your app into different components. You can, in fact, this one that I have here, I can decide to create a new component called header. And in that header component is where I'll put all my, just like all these, where you have different stuffs in your header, you have a lot of things. So that's how you can do it. And then you can have footer, another component for footer where you store, where you write all the footer stuffs. You can have another one for sidebar, you can have one for news feed. So you can have as many components as you want, right? And it keeps your application clean and neat. You understand? So let's assume, so I was talking about state earlier. So this was hard coded. I have to write this myself, but let's assume your data is coming from the backend. You can store a state in a component. The state can be stored in this component or even in this component, this app component. I can put it in this app component and then say, and then pass it as props to this to-do list. As props to this to-do list, then I'll receive it from this as props, as property, and then I'll now do props dot to-do list dot map, and it should still work. Okay, I make any mistake somewhere. To-do list, props, to-do list. Oh, the typo. Okay, so you can see still the same thing. So, but the difference is that because this state is right here in this app component, I can be able to interact with it. Like I can decide to also pass it to this search box so that when you're searching for something, it interacts with this and maybe remove some or prioritize some. I'm trying to also pass it to this h1 component, this h1 tag, and say that you're searching for something instead of saying my to-do list, to just be showing you the recent one that you currently are searching for, you want to edit. You understand? So deciding where you want to put your states really matters a lot. So it's one of the skills that you get to learn as you advance in React. So I think we can stop here for today. What I wanted us to achieve today is componentization and props, and I think we've been able to achieve that, and I hope it's pretty clear. So the idea of components is just creating smaller JSX files that handles a particular part of our application, and then at the end of the day we bring them together and arrange them. All these components can still be styled. You can still decide to put a div to wrap a particular component, and then you can still style it using normal style in CSS. Just that the difference here is if you want to use styles in JSX, you need to write the let me just show you how it looks like. So these are your right style in JSX. You can see background color has been changed to red. Ideally in CSS is background then hyphen color, but this GSS syntax, it's cameo case, background with capital letter C before color. So it's like a dictionary or an object where you give it the CSS variable and then the value, right? So you can also write CSS inside here, and you can see the search box has a kind of red. Even though on the search box components, I do not add any background or anything. So like you can basically manipulate and do all the cool stuff you want to do. So that's just, by the way, that's how to write CSS in JSX. Maybe I should just leave it. It's usually like this. The outer one being the fact that you're trying to initialize JSX, and then the inner one is the object where you write the CSS variables and the CSS classes and properties. So yeah, so that's basically that's simple. I could have talked about hooks and storing data in states, but it might probably be too early for us to do that. But what we'll be looking at in the next class is using hooks and making API calls to the backend. Right here we have to-do listers. But in the next class, we're going to be fetching this from the backend using the fetch API. We're going to be fetching it asynchronously, and then we're going to be looking into states more deeply, especially use states where we store the state of our application, and then we're also going to be looking into use effects. So this use effects I'm using this to explain the life cycle of React, because what's happening is the React DOM, this guy right here, is rendering our application the way we interact with it. So if I add a new to-do list to this item, for example, let me give this to be 4. New. React is not going to reload this application, and which is what happens when you do normal HTML document.getElements by ID stuff. It's not going to reload this application. It's not expensive. It has undone that for us. What React will just do is check what this React DOM, this virtual DOM will do is this guy right here. Check the current state of the application. Let me inspect this. So everything is still HTML and CSS. At the end of the day, you can see to-do list, and see my search bar here. See the to-do list item that we created, to-do item. You see the movies. So everything is still HTML and CSS, right? Nothing's changing. But React is just the one that is helping us to convert this JSX into HTML and CSS. So after I added a new to the application here, we have to check the current DOM, which is this HTML and CSS, and then compare it to the new one, which is this one that has a new item. And then instead of reloading the whole application, it's just append the new change just below it, right here. This learn React. So it makes updates of application to be fast and dynamic. So React is very smart, and the React DOM helps with that. So yeah, I think that's basically about React. So yeah, we're going to continue in the next class. Of course, we need to style this to be much better. It's pretty ugly. So yeah, I hope we all this to the list to item. Okay, so as usual, if you have any questions, you can always drop it on the group, and you can also reach out to me. So we continue from here in the next class. Thank you, everyone. Okay, looks like Ernest is not here. So I think we can end the call. Yeah, so thank you all for sticking to the end. It's a pretty complex, it might be complex, but it's something that's very easy, and I'm very sure we're gonna catch up as we progress. It's very easy. React is like we go to like when you want to build stuff, just use React. Very fast, you build very beautiful web app or even website. Okay, bye guys.